Hey guys, today we're in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 21. Now as David leaves Jonathan, we see that he comes to the place of Nob. The tabernacle was there, and so he's coming not because the tabernacle is there. He just happens to come upon the city, and there he meets a priest named Ahimelech. And he meets this priest, and this priest and David have an interaction. And he says, "Why are you alone?" Right? He knows who David is. David is the mighty warrior. He is the one who's defeated many Philistines. You would think he would have an entourage. And so why is David alone? That's what the priest is trying to figure out. And it starts with David lying. David simply says a lie, and he says, "The king is charging me with a matter and said no one can know anything." He starts with a lie. "I'm on a secret mission from the king," right? Which was a total lie. And he says, "And he has appointed me above these young men. There's some men that are hiding that I'm taking care of," which is also another lie. David is all alone running for his life. And the priest answered, David said, "Give me some bread." And the priest said, I don't have any bread. The only bread I have is the show bread, right? Remember, in the tabernacle, you walk in, to the right would be a table. On that table, there would be stacked 12 loaves of bread, one loaf of bread representing one tribe of Israel. And these were special bread. These were holy bread that was used in the tabernacle, and then they were replaced every week. And so he says, "I don't have any bread. All I have is the holy bread, the show bread." He says, "Have the young men kept themselves from women?" Now, what the priest is asking here is that this show bread is only supposed to be eaten by the priest, okay? But if you were to go back and you're to read Leviticus chapter 24, where it talks about this, it says that the priest should eat of this bread. It doesn't say that the priest can only eat of this bread. And so here the priest does something that is wrong in the priestly customs, but it is not wrong in the Word of God. But he knows that this bread is a special bread. This is a holy bread. This is inside the tabernacle, right? So he at least says, hey, are this group of young men that David's lying about, he says, are they at least clean, right? There has to be some form of holiness. Have they abstained from sex? And David says, well, of course they have. We're traveling, and when we're on expedition, when we're on soldier duties, we don't do that. So they're good. They can eat of it. And so Ahimelech gives them the show bread. What's interesting about this is we see Jesus talks about this, and he uses this example in Matthew chapter 12 of talking about the Sabbath and eating what is holy and not holy. And so it's just interesting that we have this, and then Jesus quotes this section. So Abimelech does what is right, and he gives him the bread, and he goes. But before he goes, he needs a weapon, right? You got to think, David's on the run. He has no weapon. And so we come across this guy named Doeg the Edomite. And he is here not for spiritual purposes, but probably just doing something for the king. And he asked, and David said to Ahimelech, "Hey, do you have a sword, a knife? You have any kind of weapon?" The king wanted me to go so fast that I didn't have time to get my armor together, which was another lie, right? And he says, well, you know what? But I do have a sword, and it's the sword of Goliath, the one whom you killed. And he says, do you want it? And David says, absolutely, I want it. And you have to imagine, as David takes this sword, he remembers how he got this sword, right? It wasn't from lying. It wasn't from running. It wasn't from being scared. It was for standing up for the Lord. And so he takes this sword, and David flees, and he heads to the Philistines. Somehow in his mind, he thought he could be harbored in the Philistine territory, even though he's killed so many of them. It makes no sense, right? Sometimes when we're running, we don't think the best way, right? And so he goes, and the king instantly realizes, oh my gosh, this is David. And David says, oh, I'm cooked, right? My goose is cooked. This is not going to be good. There's no way he's going to let me go. I'm the guy who killed Goliath and so many Philistines. And so what does he do? He starts to act crazy. And he's a madman, and he's scratching on the walls and the gates, and he's drooling down himself. And he's just acting simply like a crazy person. So much so that the king calls the servants and says, this isn't David. Why would you bring me this man? I got enough crazy people here. I don't need another. Get rid of him. And what's most interesting about this section is if you were to take a moment and turn forward and read Psalms 34, at least the first couple verses. Psalms 34 was written as he's leaving this king, right? Because he acted crazy, he leaves, and it's him thanking God that he got himself into this mess, right? David went to the Philistines. He never should have done that. He goes in, but God's mercy was great, and God's mercy and grace allowed him to get out of that situation. So even though David wasn't doing things correctly, even though he was lying and doing all this, God's grace and mercy was still with him, and it was abundant. And it's David writing and saying thank you to God for how great he is, even though David is not doing the best of things. And that's, once again, that's Psalms 34. So I hope you take a chance and read a little bit of that. It just kind of ties in with this story. But I hope that makes sense and a little clarification on this. And it's neat that we even see Jesus uses this story as he was on the earth debating with the Pharisees over the Sabbath. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we'll see you tomorrow in chapter 22. God bless.